Hey humans, this is Tom Jacobs. I'm on the web at tdjacobs.com and want to do a kind of a brief video on thinking about Pluto in a certain way. Now, Pluto's kind of a niche thing. Not everybody focuses on it a lot. You may know I'm an evolutionary astrologer. So it's kind of a niche corner of the astrological world where we do focus on Pluto quite a lot as indicative of a part of the multi-life journey of consciousness or of soul. So um, Pluto has a terrible reputation, and I find myself all the time talking about the positives of Pluto. And I hear from clients and students a lot that the way that I approach Pluto, which is unique even in evolutionary astrology, um, is quite empowering. That's my goal. So I want to just give you an idea of how to think about Pluto in a loving way, or how to live with Pluto in a loving way. This is threaded throughout my work, and I'll put links to resources in the description of the video so you can check more of this out. But the basic idea is Pluto, in my view, represents the unconscious, which is a pretty prevalent view about Pluto stuff. But for me, it contains the records of disempowerment as well as empowerment from many lifetimes in the unconscious. So Pluto is something in my world that you have to do to make your life feel meaningful, like by house and sign and aspect if it's retrograde, blah, blah, blah. You have to do it so that you can have your life feel meaningful. It's like this existential validation need in our root chakra, which is the foundation of our whole life, right, in our whole body and energy field. So you have to do it. And the records or memories from the unconscious from many lives, from millions of lives, I hate to break it to you, but if you think like you've only had one other life, and if you do this right, you don't have to come back. We're all living millions of lives because, from the soul's point of view, we need to have all possible human experiences. So, in your unconscious, it's also not a race to the finish line of being good, by the way. Check out my teachings on karma and the Soul's Journey trilogy of books for more on that. But also the EA Fundamentals 1 and 2 Home Study courses that explains all that. But Plutonian empowerment is a real thing, though in the counseling room, we focus on Plutonian disempowerment. So you have to do Pluto when you move toward it because you have a sense of, yeah, this is a good thing. I need to do this thing. The records from your unconscious, the memories and feelings attached to the memories of when it didn't go well will come up. So then we're filled with that quite often, or at times, that sense of negativity or that experience of something negative. So I'm trying to do this thing, and this stuff keeps coming up. And even blocks or repetitions of other life pain will manifest in front of me. So, like, I have Pluto in Libra in the 12th house. So, certain things about relationships and fairness and things that aren't fair and loss and the randomness sometimes of how people come in and out of each other's lives. I have memories attached to emotions from other lives. And so when I pursue Libra 12th house stuff, that stuff may be triggered and activated. So, how to deal is kind of a big question for a lot of the people that I work with. Like, recognizing the intensity and depth of this Plutonian stuff. What am I supposed to do? How do I deal with it? So, I want to give you a little tidbit and invite you to explore all the things I've been spending years developing, the materials and resources. It's shadow work, as I'm sure you've heard, but I add this layer of conscious shadow work to it. Conscious shadow work. It's not just knowing that I have this hot button issue or this pain or this trauma or this grief or this anger or whatever Plutonian keyword you might want to use. This jealousy, this rage, whatever, this despair, this hopelessness, whatever. When I get close to this thing and something goes wrong, I lose hope. That's Pluto. Conscious shadow work is not just knowing that you have this issue or pattern or buried thing to heal. It is in making friends with the shadow within you. Not just saying, well, yeah, there's a monster who lives in the closet, but bringing that monster out of the closet and learning to relate, learning to understand where that person is coming from. Let's say it's rage. This is part of my path. Let's say it's rage. I can keep that part out, and I did. And then I embraced it and was worried it would take over. That's part of our Plutonian fear. I don't want to go to that grief or that rage or that depressiveness because that despair. I don't want to take over. Well, how can I learn to understand where that part of me is coming from? So one of the principles I teach is in every life, including this one, you have been shaped by real experience. So where does rage come from? It comes from pain. So if you hold a part of you at bay because it's angry, you fail to open the door to deal with the pain behind it. So we learn how to listen to the parts of us with compassion. And that includes hearing sometimes in some people, well, I mean, potentially in anybody, hearing an inner narrative that is completely frightening. That's why I teach so much about grounding. The grounding thing, yes, I'm a spiritual teacher, but the grounding thing is useful for this too, because it's how can I deal with my garbage? You have to be grounded, sets the stage. So cords into the earth, hugging trees, spending time in nature, being in the body, listening to the body, not denying what we feel or store in the body, right? Emotions, energies, whatever. You can get the grounding meditation on my website, and there's a lot of also channeled meditations, which will help you ground as well, from tdjacobs.com. Under channeled audio is where the those things are, but the grounding meditation is linked from the homepage. Look for the it's a free download. Look for the forest path, the picture of green forest trees, whatever. So listening with compassion so that part feels heard lessens its nature as a shadow, lessens its intensity of feeling denied love. So remember, you have to do your Pluto thing to make your life feel meaningful. But nobody else can do it for you. You have to do it. So you try to do it, you start to do it, or you're doing it. And the fear, the panic, the shame, the guilt, whatever, the Plutonian underbelly stuff comes up and may take over. Listen to those parts of you from a grounded place. So you listen, understanding, okay, this rage, for example, comes from somewhere. What is the problem? And in me, that part will be like, bup, 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 bup. There's a whole narrative. There's a whole, and it's frightening. I don't want to listen. I don't want to have that narrative and those words in my space. I don't want to feel those things. But if I don't listen and acknowledge and validate, yeah, okay, great. I've been shaped by real experience. Something happened that caused this. If I don't do that, the part will never relax. So the other part of Plutonian stuff, well, the way I look at the Plutonian landscape includes passion, conviction, deep authenticity, transformative abilities. We may cut ourselves off from those beautiful parts of Pluto if we don't lovingly engage the shadow and listen. I like to say, imagine, like, let's say that anything, rage or jealousy or grief or despair, guilt, shame, imagine that a friend of yours or a loved one says, can you just listen to me for like 10 minutes while I talk about something really difficult? And you say, yeah, sure, of course. And they say, well, before you really agree, like you might be a little frightened because I don't think you've seen this part of me before. And it may be really intense and negative. It may be angry. It may be sad, whatever it is. Like it might be horrible to listen to. And you say, well, I mean, I'll give it a try. The person says, I just need to be heard. You say, okay, great. I'm braced. I'm ready. And the person goes into this like 6.5 minute tirade that does freak you the expletive out. And you're wondering, oh my God, should I call this person's loved one to intervene and call somebody, call a psychiatrist, call a, like what? That person is just expressing all of this negativity in this container. After 6.5 minutes, he or she sighs this huge sigh of relief and stops and says, oh my gosh, thank you so much. You don't know how helpful that was to me. I just needed to express it. I just needed for someone to understand. to listen without judging me. And you say, sure, yeah, no problem. I care about you. And the hair on the back of your neck is standing up and your muscles in your back are taut. You're like, you're getting a little anxiety. Hopefully you didn't absorb the energy. And the person goes off and minds her own business and lives life again. That's what we have to do with our shadow parts. Anger, jealousy, rage, despair, hopelessness, grief, sorrow, hopelessness, whatever. Create a space where you can listen. Now, for me, of course, I don't want to have this experience. I want to deal with this, but this to me is a positive because I'm going into and ultimately through something negative. So I'm asking you to have some faith that once you're super grounded and you know you are not your emotions, when you know you are not what you're feeling, and you can have compassion for different parts of you and understand where they're coming from, where you have been in this life or other lives. When you can create that container, that part can express. You can write it in the journal. You could type it in the journal. I typically remember it in my head, so I don't write it down. You might be afraid of having evidence. I said some of these negative things. I don't want to find them later. You can get rid of them, but you can burn them or whatever. But I know people who do all these things. But for me, it's like I remember it once it's clear and I hear the narrative. But anyway, this is conscious shadow work. It is not, this is the main thing I want to get into. It is not indulging in negativity to listen to what hurts. It is not indulging in creating violence if you listen to the part of you who has anger. You don't have to act from that part of you. You don't have to act from any such part of you, any of these Plutonian parts. But if you ignore the shadow or deny your right to feel something, or deny your right to have been affected by what you've experienced, shadow part festers. Shadow parts fester. And they grow in intensity because part of you might feel resentment at not being heard or listened to or acknowledged. So have compassion that humans are shaped by their experiences. Have compassion that you have been shaped by your experiences. And whatever you feel is what you're feeling. I was just doing a Soul's Journey multi-life overview reading this morning for somebody with Pluto and Scorpio. I was explaining like everybody in your subgeneration has the challenge of not judging how intensely you feel things, how deeply you feel things, how hard it is to let go of certain things, like this attitude or that pain. You know, like I'm not done feeling something. And other people might say, can't you just relax or meditate that out or let it go? And you can't, you know, or how intensely you react to things because of these deep feelings, like intense desire and craving versus, and also intense repulsion or pushing something away, rejection. Everybody with Pluto and Scorpio, right? But it's a Plutonian thing. It's just amplified for people with Pluto and Scorpio to not shame or judge what you feel. That's a Plutonian healing path. So how can Pluto be done in a loving way? Start with yourself and stop fearing what you feel or shaming what you've been through and how it has affected you. Therefore, how you now feel about certain things. Because Pluto does represent secrets and intense stuff that not everybody wants to look at, that most people don't want to have to look at. You might have been through certain things that others in your life now or when you were younger haven't been able to acknowledge or hold space for. And so this can seem like we don't have the support we need because others are trying to avoid Pluto. So your conscious shadow work is how you're going to heal your Pluto. Anyway, Thanks for your time and energy. Check out what I'm up to at tdjacobs.com, and I'm going to put links to resources, including readings where I do your own chart, and also courses and different materials that will help you work with Pluto more consciously. It has a terrible reputation. Gets a bad rap. I guess it gets a bad rap, has a bad rep. I always confuse those. It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, it has to be that way for us to process through things, but we can learn how not to get lost in those feelings if we don't judge them and we consciously work through them. So my Pluto key phrase, what is power? Where does it come from? It doesn't come from who's loudest or who's harmful or who has money or influence or the fear or respect of others. That's not power. Absolute, unflinching, unashamed self-awareness and self-knowledge, which is shadow work, followed by absolute, unflinching, unashamed self-acceptance, which is conscious shadow work, listening with compassion to these parts of us. Take care, and I'll see you soon.